For nearly a year, ever since the October 7th massacre, Israel has been attacked on multiple fronts. Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen. Then there's Syria, Iraq, the West Bank, Judea and Samaria. Folks, the ring of fire driven by Iran has ignited. Meanwhile, the Iranian regime has taken advantage of the chaos to continue to advance its nuclear program, and it may be getting help from some very powerful friends. Mark Dubowitz is one of the world's top experts on Iran's nuclear program. He's CEO of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, a great foreign policy think tank in Washington, D.C., and he's been sanctioned by both Iran and Russia. So, folks, you know that means he's doing something right. Mark, great to have you. Hey, first off, major operation in Lebanon against Hezbollah earlier today with close to, reportedly, 3,000 nearly terrorists injured by exploding pagers. Could this be a prelude to a major war between Israel and Hezbollah?
Eric, great to be on the show. Thanks for having me. So, yeah, I mean, this seems like an incredible operation by the Israeli Mossad, backed up by Israel's Unit 8200, which is their cyber unit. I mean, the fact that they were able to deeply penetrate the pager communication systems and inflict this kind of damage on Hezbollah is extraordinary. I think the Israelis are rebuilding their deterrence, which was so shattered after October 7th, and they're rebuilding it brick by brick. If this is a prelude to war, possibly, but the Biden administration is putting enormous pressure on the Israelis not to hit Hezbollah harder than they're already hitting them. The administration doesn't want a war before the election. And so huge American political pressure on the Israelis. But of course, the Israelis have to take the fight to Hezbollah. They got to get their people back in their homes, and they got to get rid of this Iran-backed terror organization that has been threatening their people.
Mark, great point. Getting the people back into their homes. Look, tens of thousands of Israelis still evacuated nearly a year from their homes in the north. It just seems like the current situation along the Israel-Lebanon border is not sustainable for Israel to continue to thrive as a nation. You can't have an entire region effectively shut down by this constant barrage of Hezbollah rocket fire.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, that's like, if narco-terrorists basically took over the American South and hundreds of thousands of millions of Americans couldn't return to their home and were being held hostage by a narco-terrorist organization. That's effectively what Hezbollah is. They're a narco-terrorist organization backed by the Islamic Republic of Iran, financed, armed, weaponized, equipped, and coordinated by Iran. The problem, of course, is Israel needs U.S. support. And if they don't have the backing of the Biden-Harris administration and they go to war, it's going to be, as you said, a seven-front war, including with Iran involved in this directly. So they need American support.
Mark, great points. Hey, you just returned from Israel. You had meetings with top-level leaders in the Jewish state. What is the view of taking the fight not just to the proxies like Hezbollah, like the Houthis, but directly to the head of the snake, the Iranian regime? Has there been a shift in strategy there on the part of Israel where they're saying, look, this all emanates from Iran, so maybe we should work on targeting the regime that's behind it all?
There has been, working for many months on this, actually many years on this. And as you say, taking the fight to the head of the snake or the head of the octopus. I mean, Ali Khamenei, the Iran supreme leader, has a plan, and that is to destroy the Jewish state by 2040. He's got a clock in Palestine Square in Tehran counting down the number of years, months, and hours until he destroys Israel. And he's been fighting Israel using his terror proxies. The Israelis have got to take the fight to him. We, as Americans, have got to take the fight to him. There are millions of Iranians who despise the regime. They've been on the streets and protests since 2009. We've done nothing shamefully to support them. And those people could be our proxies. They could be people who can work to take down the Islamic Republic, which today is building nuclear weapons, not just aimed at Israel or our Gulf allies, but those are going to be nuclear-tipped intercontinental ballistic missiles aimed at American cities.
Mark, so well said. I'm so glad you brought that point out. For every American watching right now, could you just reiterate why this Iranian threat is not just a threat to Israel, even just Saudi Arabia or Europe? This ultimately threatens us here in America. We're the nation that the Iranian regime refers to as the Great Satan.
That's right. We're the Great Satan. Israel's the Little Satan. And the regime in Iran has been killing Americans for decades, including recently, American hostages that they took after October 7th. And they're building nuclear weapons again. And they're putting those nuclear warheads on intercontinental ballistic missiles. That's not for Tel Aviv. That's not for Riyadh. That's not even for London. That's for Washington, New York, and the heartland. And so the Israelis are fighting the fight against our enemy. And, they've been taking casualties, and Israeli men and women are fighting this fight on behalf of America, not only against the Islamic Republic of Iran, but against radical Islam, which both on the Sunni and Shiite side has threatened America for years and has culminated in attacks against America, including on 9/11.
Israel is the first line of defense for Western civilization, and we will discuss it more with our good friend Mark Dubowitz, CEO of the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. After the break, what's the latest on Iran's nuclear weapons program? How close are they to the bomb? Find out. Welcome back to Stack Effect Tonight. It's been compared to the Cuban Missile Crisis in slow motion. I'm talking about Iran's nuclear program, and we are joined by a foremost expert, Mark Dubowitz, on that very issue, CEO of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies in Washington, D.C. But how close is Iran, do you believe, to a nuclear breakout, and what does that mean?
Eric, they're a turn of a screw to nuclear weapons breakout. I mean, they've got the fissile material that they can break out to a bomb in 7 days, 7 bombs in a week, maybe 13 to 15 bombs in a month. They've got the missiles to deliver them, the ballistic missiles that can take those warheads to Israel to hit our troops in the Middle East, hit our allies in the Gulf and in Europe. And the last thing they need to do is develop the actual warhead that they can affix to that missile. There's been now reporting that, including from the Director of National Intelligence, that the Iranians have begun preliminary work on building that warhead. It's actually interesting that since 2007, the U.S. intelligence community has said for 17 years that Iran has not started weaponization work. Well, that changed just about a month ago, where Congress demanded a briefing from the intelligence community, and they finally came out and admitted that Iran has begun preliminary work. So again, turn of the screw away. And most of Iran's nuclear escalation has occurred since Joe Biden's election and his decision to abandon the maximum pressure campaign of President Trump and turn to a strategy of what I would call maximum deference or maximum concessions.
Yeah, and meanwhile, the Iranian regime plots to assassinate President Trump on U.S. soil. Mark, is Russia involved in the Iranian nuclear program at all? We're hearing some rumblings in recent days from U.S. intelligence. They fear that Russia may be assisting Iran with the nuclear program. Is it a quid pro quo type relationship, so to speak, where, look, Iran's supplying Russia with attack drones, with ballistic missiles? Is this how Russia returns the favor to the Iranian regime?
Yeah, I mean, for many years, the Russians were not actually assisting Iran's nuclear weapons program. They were actually trying to constrain it. They did build a civilian nuclear reactor inside Iran, made a lot of money from the Iranians building that reactor. But now I think it's a different game, as you said, and the Russians are highly dependent now on Iranian military assistance, drones and missiles to help kill Ukrainians. And there's no doubt the Iranians are asking for something in return, and that return, quid pro quo, is Russian assistance. The Russians have tremendous expertise in building nuclear weapons, and I think also supplying the Iranians with fighter jets and other high-tech systems that the Iranians need to build up a significant and deadly conventional military. So this is part of the axis of aggressors, the Iranians, the Chinese, and the Russians, who are getting closer and closer and threatening American interests.
Yeah, I've called them the Gathering Storm Coalition, Mark. I throw North Korea in the mix as well. Hey, all is not lost. Obviously, perilous time for the world and in the Middle East. The Iranian people are sick and tired of this regime, and that's saying something. It's upon us, actually, Mark, the 2-year anniversary of the death of that courageous young Iranian woman, Mahsa Amini. What are the chances for regime change in Iran?
Well, Eric, they keep rising up. They rose up in 2009. Millions of Iranians were on the streets yelling death to the dictator. President Obama, are you with us or are you with the dictator? And President Obama decided to choose the Ayatollah and engage with the regime. And then Iranians were beaten and brutalized. And even Khamenei himself, the supreme leader, said at the end of those protests, when he was briefing his security officials, we were on the edge of a cliff. And of course, the United States, President Obama, decided not to push him off the cliff. And then the Iranian protests went somewhat dormant. They erupted again in 2017, 18, 19, 20, 21. And then now you're talking about Mahsa Amini protests when she was brutally killed by the Iranian regime's thugs. There was a huge protest, women life freedom, and hundreds of thousands of Iranian women were on the streets saying we want an end to gender apartheid, to forcing us to wear these hijabs and discriminating against us at every walk of life. Iranian people have been on the streets, incredibly courageous, incredibly resilient. They've gotten no support from the United States. They've gotten a little support from Israel. But it's critical that we understand they're our best allies, and we can weaken the regime, we can undermine the regime, and if history smiles on us, we can bring down the regime. But it's always good to put your enemy on defense and go after the head of the octopus instead of having the Israelis and the Americans always fighting the octopus's tentacles, which are these terror proxies like Hamas and Hezbollah and others.
Amen. Mark, great stuff as always. Keep up the great work, folks. You can check Mark out on X, across social media, and of course at fdd.org. Mark, God bless. We'll see you again soon. And